Hey everybody, welcome. Glad to have you here. A special edition. I don't know what to call this. I guess it's our semi-lame attempt at an in-state FCS signing day special. I don't know. It's a really long title. I'll let the two writers also in the room maybe try to shorten that bad boy down for me. But glad to be here. Glad to have these two knuckleheads back with me. And again, just glad we're able to get our schedules together to be able to do this because I love in-state FCS football, and I know these two guys do as well. So, first of all, I want to give you your spotlight here. Ooh, look at that. Give you your own little spotlight there. Dan Verdun, one of the, what are we calling you? A co-author of the Prairie State Pigskin blog? Is that what we're calling you?
I've been called a lot worse. So
I've called you a lot worse. Dan, an author of several books, terrific writer, obviously, and again, just love what you guys do with Pigskin, and again, just kind of all over FCS football in state. And again, you can follow Dan at Dan Verdun, Verdun, author. In case you did not know what he is and what he does, author. Dan Verdun, author. You can follow him on Twitter. As far as accessing Prairie State Pigskin, well, you should know that by now if you follow my Twitter because I try to retweet these guys as much as possible, but at Chicago Now, you can go to Chicago Now and then find their blog there, which again is just chock full of terrific inside information and great insights from these guys as well. So Dan, first of all, thanks for joining us. And the handsome fella on the bottom, he's been at this writing thing for a while. Barry Bottino, Northwest Herald, part of Shaw Media. Also, again, obviously a co-author of Prairie State. Am I reading that right? I hope I am. Am I screwing that up on you guys? No, Prairie State Pigskin.
Correct.
Okay, off of Chicago Now. And again, Barry, great to have you here. Love your insights. And like I said, I gobble up everything you guys put out. It's great stuff. So keep up the way above average work. So I figured we get together and do this. It's been an interesting year, certainly from recruiting. We'll get into the transfer portal, the COVID year, how it's impacted, and I think really impacted FCS football in particular. The impact on the recruiting classes here for all four in-state schools at the FCS level. Just a lot to go over. 2 new head coaches, and so we have a lot to cover. So let's get into it. So let's start. I don't know. Where you want to start?
Your hat gives it away, Tim.
Well, no, I usually save the best for last. But, we can do that. Let's do this with you. So, who's my victim for SIU?
Well, I've got SIU, Tim. I appreciate you having us. Thanks so much. And I think we mentioned the portal, and I would say in February SIU signed 10 kids, 5 from the portal, 5 from the prep ranks, and I think they are perfectly happy living in both of those worlds. Dan did a story for our blog recently about the portal. Some coaches obviously do not like it. Some do, and some are very willing to live with it. And I think SIU is willing to use it to their advantage. I think what they've done in the portal is pretty helpful as far as defensively. They're rebuilding a defense right now. In the portal, they over December and February, they have gotten 4 DBs. Nick Hill loves his depth in the defensive backfield. They have 3 new linebackers from the portal and 2 D linemen from the portal. As far as, I know, Tim, we've talked in the past about how SIU's recruiting classes from the prep ranks, at least, are leaning south. Yeah. In his press conference about the February class, Coach Hill mentioned that the importance of recruiting Memphis, might come as a surprise to folks in Chicago, but Memphis is 2 hours closer to Carbondale than Chicago is. So it does make sense for them to kind of have their toe down in the Memphis area.
I know this
they brought in 6 from Missouri, 3 from Florida, 2 from Georgia, and only 1 from Illinois in this whole class.
Yeah.
So
I think is a guy that covers high school football in the state and is located in the northern part of the state. And as an alum, yeah, I was a little bummed out to see the signing list and see really Peyton Mazer is the only in-state high school kid. But I get it. And to be fair as well, Barry, and you're talking, local area, I think as an alum, you have to be very happy that they hit St. Louis and did a really nice job in St. Louis, which they have continued to do over the past, I'd say probably since Nick's been there. They have always hit that St. Louis area hard. And quite honestly, guys, that area has developed into a big-time talent producer, and it's remained that way. It hasn't peaked and valleyed. It's been a steady talent producer. So,
Absolutely.
Again, there's some really good names there. It's funny, Barry, you mentioned kind of looking south, and I know this has nothing to do with FCS football, but it's interesting that the Missouri Valley for basketball is adding Belmont, and they're adding Murray State, which, again, I just think goes right into that whole vision of, okay, maybe, we know where our strengths are as a conference on the basketball side.
Yeah.
And now you see them looking maybe to expand and expansion, because let's face it, what conference isn't looking to switch things up and expand these days? It's interesting for sure.
Well, I wanted to mention, Tim, you talked a little bit about Peyton Mazer, and I wanted to touch on him a little bit. That's the only Illinois kid in the SIU class. And he's a big one, 6'5", 335, offensive lineman, and played 4 sports in high school. At a smaller high school, it's probably not as uncommon, but I know up here in the Chicago area, that's pretty uncommon for a kid to play 4 sports.
Christopher High School, what, half hour away, I think?
Yeah, it's right next to Coach Hill's hometown of DuQuoin in Christopher, Illinois. So, I mean, and Nick Hill said that he'd been to their camps. He'd been to games there since he was, growing up in that area. So a kid they knew a lot about.
Yeah. And by the way, if there's a kid from this class that needs to be a poster boy for SIU football, it's Mazer. Because I don't know if you've ever seen him, but again, you talked about his size, 6'5", 335, and maybe the best looking mullet I've seen on a kid in years. So he screams Southern Illinois. So, and a great personality as well. A couple of those St. Louis area kids to watch as well. Jimmy Lansing had a chance to see at some camps from Chaminade Prep, and a very, very good player. So yeah, there's definitely some talent here. Did Nick address? I mean, I know you mentioned the portal, and I know you mentioned filling out the defensive needs, and I know secondary as well. I think they signed 6 defensive backs.
Yeah.
And had to reload. Was it more of our needs were there and that's where we went? Did anyone get into, was it a lack of talent at the high school level, or was it, and like you said early to begin this, I tend to agree. I think you got to get comfortable in both worlds.
Yeah. I think with them on the defensive side, that's where the majority of their 6th year seniors were. At every level of that defense, they lost kind of a leader, a key leader, and someone who had been in that program for a very long time. They signed a kid from Central Michigan, George Douglas, a linebacker who, Coach Hill said, this is, our guy to fill in for Bryce Notary. So, a kid who had been super productive in the SIU program. So I think it was more of dipping in and trying to, they're a top 10 team now after almost a decade out of the playoffs, and that's where they want to stay. So I think the portal is really going to help them in that respect. And Tim, we talked about the portal giveth and the portal taketh away. One kid who jumped into the portal was Isaiah Hartrop, a wide receiver, a speedy kid from the St. Louis area. And most recently came back and said he's going to stay at SIU, which is a big keep for them. A kid who I guess really kind of jumped out during the Illinois State game. They were down 17-0 at home to an Illinois State team that was kind of plodding along last year. Hartrop in the second half has a 70-yard kickoff that sets up 1 touchdown and has a pretty gorgeous one-handed catch in the middle of the field for 47 yards. That sets up another touchdown. So he's a kid who's going to have a big impact.
Yeah, I got to the point last year where I didn't even listen to like the first half. How they started all year. They were horrible early.
They were. Yeah, they had a tough time in the first half. Yeah.
You talk about the portal, and Dan, obviously I'd like your thoughts on this as well. and we talked about the portal giveth and it takes away. What are the issues that maybe you can run into? And the first thing I think of right off the top is, I mean, how much really different is this going to the portal for kids versus the old school going to the JUCO junction for kids, where number one, you don't know exactly what you're bringing in. You don't know what you're inheriting in some ways. And gelling and bonding, how difficult could that possibly be? Because if you continue to rely on the portal, Barry, run with it. Start with it.
I would say, in Dan's story that he did recently about the portal, he got a lot of comments from coaches. And I think the most interesting thing as far as the portal is what happens now. And Tom Michael, the athletic director at Eastern Illinois, had some interesting comments in Dan's story about, let's take a look at the portal now, see what it does well and what it does not do well. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of guys being able to jump in 365 days of the year.
Yeah,
I think maybe there needs to be a quiet period and an open period for the portal. But Dan, I'll let you jump in as well.
No, to piggyback off of what Barry just said, I mean, just in recent days, you had Darius Joyner, who was the leading tackler in all of FCS, the safety from Western Illinois. He's entered the portal, and he has already transferred once. He came to Macomb from Jacksonville State. I see a lot of people out there saying, oh, he's going to go to a Power 5. I mean, the guy didn't play very much at Jacksonville State, so I'm not sure he's going to a Power 5, but he had a heck of a year at Western Illinois. And, for him now to enter and then lose him is a big deal. Jason Johnson down at Eastern led the Ohio Valley in tackles, kid out of Rich East. He has entered the portal. It's been kind of quiet on his Twitter account. I don't know if they're trying to get him back. They recently promoted their linebackers coach, who Johnson was pretty tight with, to their defensive coordinator, now with Chris Wilkerson being the head coach at Eastern. So I don't know how that's going to play in, but it's interesting. Tom Michael, as Barry mentioned, did have a lot of interesting comments. I think it's almost too easy for kids to enter now. And
100%.
Something Michael mentioned, which I hadn't really thought of, is a kid can do that, obviously, but at the end of that semester, that institution is no longer financially obligated to that kid. So a lot of these kids are giving up their scholarship money, whether it's a partial or a full, and a lot of them are ending up nowhere.
Yep. Yeah, it's a scary thought. The other thing that I find really interesting with the portal is, and by the way, I'm going to give a plug for one of our Twitter feeds, Rivals Portal. I think you do a really good job of following it. We actually, just to give you guys an idea, Mike Farrell, who's been our longtime national recruiting expert, kind of backing off the day-to-day a little bit, but he basically has taken on the portal responsibilities for us. And you talk about a full-time job. That is a full-time job keeping track. And he's done, I know he's had some help. He's done a great job, but what I like what comes out of what they do with the Rivals one, you get a lot of stats that come out. And guys, number one, it's shocking the amount of kids in the portal. And number two, and you just mentioned, Dan, what's shocking is these kids that are not winding up anywhere, where they're going in the portal and they're not signing. They're still looking for homes. So it is a major, major gamble that these kids are taking. And the other thing I want to add, and Barry, you nailed it 100%. There's got to be a cooling off period. I think you've got to, when your season ends to maybe January, I mean, again, I know there's semester changes and what have you, but you've got to allow a bit of a period here where you just shut all access to that down for a handful of months. And then, and then after that, then allow a time period to open it. But you're right, 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's like anything. People are going to do dumb things and are going to make uninformed decisions, and they're just going to hop in without really realizing what they're getting into. So it's interesting. It's interesting, and it's a hot button topic around the country with recruiting. There's no doubt about it. Dan, who do you want to cover? Who do you want to talk about next?
Well, since we've been talking about transfers, let's shift to Illinois State.
There you go.
Because with their February class here, it was essentially 6 transfers and then 3 local walk-ons. One of those walk-ons being the son of the defensive coordinator, Travis Niekamp. But of those 6 transfers that the Redbirds are bringing in, 4 of them are on offense. And that Illinois State offense really struggled last year. Bryce Jefferson, who was kind of their dual threat quarterback out of Indianapolis, struggled with injuries. He entered the portal. He wound up at D2 in University of Indianapolis, back in his hometown area. So they have brought in a new offensive coordinator, Tony Peterson, who has FBS and FCS experience. He himself played at Marshall back in the 80s. I think they actually got to what was then the 1AA title game, I think in 87, sounds right. This is the second time that head coach Brock Spack has kind of abandoned this co-offensive coordinator experiment that he's had.
Right.
Neither time it's been very successful. So he's going with, what he's hoping is a proven commodity here in Peterson. And he's brought in this Zach Anasted from Minnesota, Golden Gopher. He, back in 2018, he walked on as a freshman and ended up starting the first 7 games. Since then, he's been pretty injury riddled. He lost his job to Tanner Morgan. And then when Morgan announced he was going to come back to the Golden Gophers, Anasted jumped in the portal and ISU grabbed him. Kind of interesting thing there is Brock Spack has this kind of history with these transfer quarterbacks where he likes them to be big guys. Anasted's listed at 6'3", 225. And Spack's had mixed results. I mean, he really hit with Trey Roberson, who he got out of Indiana. Yep. Took him all the way to the title game, and within like 90 seconds or something of winning it all, had Carson Wentz not put together his drive. But then he had, Brady Davis, who came from Memphis, who, wasn't terrible, but, didn't light the world on fire either. So it's been kind of those mixed results. Interesting thing about that is if you look at a lot of the Illinois kids, a lot of them are going to these Dakota schools. And I'm going to highlight Carson Camp, who was right there at Normal West.
Yeah.
Ended up being a freshman starter at South Dakota. And of course, you got Mark Gronowski, who, prior to his injury was a freshman sensation at South Dakota State.
Yeah, had a huge year. Yeah, it is interesting. The Carson Camp one was, there could not have been too many happy people around that football building at ISU when they heard that commitment, for sure. To lose him out of the backyard. The one thing I'll say about Illinois State, guys, and you heard me mention this before we started recording, I like their high school recruiting. I really do. They generally, I think they do a nice job with the kids they get. I mean, I'm looking at a kid like Jake Anderson. Again, a blueprint of Brock Spack. Kid's up in Dupac. He's up in that northwest corner of the state. Brock's a Rockford guy, born and bred, and that kind of small school, tough guy mentality. I mean, that's Jake Anderson, no doubt. Dallas Brown from East St. Louis, I thought in most years could have been a MAC level player, and obviously that changed the recruiting landscape, changed all that because of limited offers and what have you. Mark Cannon's another guy, speed guy that they picked up. I also like the Zebarth kid, the tight end that they picked up, another in-town kid that they kept, and even some of the transfers. I mean, a couple of the transfers I know that Kobe Rios out of Rock Island was a kid. I was actually at the Illinois State camp when he camped with them, and they loved him. And it was a deal where he ended up going to JUCO and comes right back. And he could be a kid, guys, I think you'll see could possibly contribute right away. And the other one is Dom Collado, Barry, up near your parts, up in the lake, where just went to Miami of Ohio and just couldn't really break the depth chart at all. He's the kind of kid that could come in and, again, pretty high level character kid, and I think a real good addition for Illinois State. So again, guys, I like what they've been able to do on the recruiting front. Now, again, will that change? Will that mix change? I don't see Brock Spack pulling further away from the high school recruiting. Dan, you get that as well? I mean, he's always got to have his hand in it as far as I'm concerned.
I do. And, you mentioned Dom, big kid. He's listed at 6'3", 325. And the other transfer they brought in, a kid who went to the University of Kentucky but didn't see any action, Jake Pope, they list him at 6'7", 300 pounds. So SPAC likes that big offensive line.
Yeah.
He's always liked the run game.
Yep.
It's funny because every year he talks about the running back depth, but then he usually settles on one guy. Now, of course, he had James Robinson a couple of years ago, who's with the Jaguars now in the NFL. Last year it was Cole Mueller, a kid out of Missouri who came pretty close to rushing for 1,000 yards in his freshman year. So he likes to find that durable back that he can give the ball to and take a little bit of heat off the quarterbacks. But definitely for their success, they're going to have to get more out of the quarterback position. And I think that's also on the receivers as well.
Yeah, you guys have nailed it. It really had those have been positions that they have just seemed to struggle with and haven't been able to maintain depth. And you mentioned the receivers. I think injury as well has been kind of a big issue on that position for a while for Illinois State. As far as Illinois State football overall is concerned, I think everyone had really high expectations, certainly in and around that program. Has it changed, Dan? Do you think? Has it settled in a little bit? I mean, I still get the feeling I don't think Brock is going anywhere. I really don't. I think they're very comfortable with him there. He's very comfortable at Illinois State. And, again, let's face it, you're playing in the Missouri Valley. It is a monstrous conference. I mean, we've seen teams end up with a losing record with about a 7-point differential between 4 or 5 games. You see it happen every year. Just your take and vibe on where things are at right now with Illinois State.
Well, he was very high on his team going into what would have been, the fall season of 2020. And of course, we know what happened with COVID with that. And, we were just talking about the portal. There were so many key players, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that transferred out of there, and many of them going to FBS programs where they played. John Ridgway, for example, saw a pretty significant time down in Arkansas in the SEC. That really was a big hit on Illinois State. And then, of course, last spring, they ran into a depth issue where they had to call off their season.
Right.
They had the win over Western Illinois, and then, within a day or two later, they were making the announcement that they weren't going to continue. And then the same thing happened to Western a few weeks later. They ran into the injury situation and they had to halt things in the spring as well.
Yeah, it's been strange. There's been some weird stuff that have happened over the last few years, and more than just Illinois State. There's no doubt about it. Barry, who's your last team?
Well, I've got Eastern Illinois to talk about, so let's take a ride down to Charleston. And obviously,
brand new head coach.
Change has been a constant in Charleston the last month or so. So on January 11th, Adam Cushing, who won 3 games in 3 seasons as head coach, decides he's going back to FBS, came from Northwestern, where he was a longtime offensive line coach, is going to follow a mentor of his, a friend of his, to Duke and coach the offensive line at Duke. Unfortunately, that left Eastern looking for a coach a couple weeks away from signing day in February. 15 days later, they were able to add Chris Wilkerson, former EIU defensive lineman, who was the head coach at the University of Chicago, pretty successful head coach on the D3 level.
Yep.
And I think Coach Wilkerson has obviously some ties to the Chicago area. And when you look at that University of Chicago roster, that is a school with a really diverse student body. Kids from almost every state in the union. I know that Dan and I have heard that Coach Wilkerson has some pretty significant ties to JUCOs in California. So that may play in a little bit here. And in February, obviously, with 8 days to put a class together, they added another kid today. They've signed 13 kids. 5 of those are wide receivers. And I think a really interesting thing is that one of those is under 6'2". You have 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", and 6'5". So that may be a little tell about where their offense is headed. They've got to score more points, Tim. 14 points a game isn't going to get it done. And quarterback play has been an issue in Charleston as well. So
defensively, they played really well.
Very well. Yeah. I think losing Johnson is huge. I know that I spoke to a source of ours, in the last 24 hours here, and they're just waiting to see what Johnson does. Obviously was a great fit there. I did a story about Jason 2 years ago now. When he was at Rich Central, he was a high school wide receiver. Before his senior year, his coach said, "We really need you to help the team and play linebacker." Played linebacker for 1 year in high school, and now he's an All-American in FCS. Yep. So that will go a long way to telling us how that defense, will come about. I think in the portal, they ended up with 9 transfers in February. Interesting one on the offensive side is Tim, a kid you probably know from the Bolingbrook program, Alex Paredes Jr. Yeah. This will be his 4th school. Started at Southeast Missouri, went to Independence Community College. Folks may know from Last Chance U, that football program. Then spent a year at Oklahoma, and now is coming back to the Chicago area to play at Eastern. So that'll be interesting. Big kids, 6'4", 315. One thing that Cushing did add in December before he left was they had 5 offensive linemen in that class. And I know that they've also added 3 transfer D linemen in February as well. I think 2 kids, obviously, Tim, that jump right off the page in the December class is the twins from Lockport, Cody and Cole Silzer. Real agile defensive ends. I think that they need a pass rush there. They have a really good pass rusher in Jordan Miles, a kid from Indianapolis who has been terrific, kind of on the lighter side, about 230-ish. But really quick off the ball. I think one kid I'm really interested in seeing too, Tim, from their December class is a kid named Diego Oliver from Kenwood, a defensive back. And folks may know, the Eastern fans may know the head coach at Kenwood is Cinque Turner, former Eastern DB. So to me, that's a really interesting one to keep, in mind as we get into the fall here.
Yeah, I had a chance to see all 3 play live last year, and yeah, Diego Oliver is a really nice player. And you mentioned Kenwood and Cinque Turner, and well, that's a pipeline you want to establish because
absolutely
he has got a roster full of scholarship kids, and it doesn't look like it's going to dry up anytime. And
well, if you follow Coach on Twitter, his kids are getting offers like crazy at this time of year. So those Kenwood kids are getting offers like crazy, and I know that Eastern was thrilled to get the 2 kids from Lockport. I know they were very excited about that. So I'm interested to see how those kids develop. Yeah,
they had a great year. They were big keys for Lockport winning 8A. They were big time leaders, and 2 terrific players. And you mentioned some of the transfer kids as well. Lazarick, is it Eatman? Yeah, from he was a Nazareth Academy kid. Was a really nice player. And then Kevin Conway, who was at Providence, and I think went prep school route for a year.
Yes.
Came back. So those are a couple of in-state names to watch as well.
Quarterback's going to be a big one. They had a kid named Ira Armstead who transferred from Virginia, a kid from South Bend. So I think that may be your leader at this point, but there's a lot of inexperience at the quarterback position right now in that roster.
Barry, I mentioned this to you and Dan that, despite the shortened window that Eastern and both Western had to, just to get a staff in place, and you see what they were able to do between the portal and the high school side, I think they kind of did a nice job.
Yeah, I think they did. I think, Eastern and Western, as far as facilities, there's no glitz and glamour in Charleston or Macomb.
No.
But I think what those programs do is they work their tails off. And I think those 2 staffs should really be commended for what they added in that short window.
Yeah, it's not the curb appeal. That's for sure. And in all honesty and being honest, and Dan, your thoughts on this as well. Look at who you're competing with. You're competing with North Dakota State, South Dakota State. Their facilities aren't stagnant. They're building up and getting better and better and better every year. Oh, by the way, they're also paying cost of living on those scholarships for those kids out of state. These schools have a lot to compete against. And it definitely, you're selling blue collar and you're selling, toughness, and because you don't have the fancy indoor facility and you don't have the tremendous locker rooms, but yeah, it's again, it's something that I think you walk in and take that job, you know, that is not gonna help you. I mean, I don't think it's to the point like my friends used to tell me back in the day at SIU when kids made visits and you didn't take them to McAndrew ever. Or if you did, you bring them in at night so they couldn't see it, so you could just kind of have them avoid it. I don't think it's gotten to that point yet, but yeah, it's certainly been a thorn in Eastern and Western side for you. And again, Illinois State, they were able to pull off some of the renovations they did at Hancock, which are fantastic. And Dan, SIU got lucky and just got under the clock and got Saluki Way done. I mean, literally months before everything went to crap. So got very lucky with that one. Well, let's finish with Western Illinois. Dan, brand new head coach, as we mentioned. Another alum, which again you're always happy to see. Your thoughts on the Leatherneck class?
Well, one thing that both Eastern and Western can sell these kids on is, hey, you've got a chance to play here right away.
Yeah.
I'm going to give an example of a kid you brought up last year down at Eastern, Colin Boehner, who played significant time at linebacker for the Panthers, and I think he was the second leading tackler in the OVC behind Jason Johnson. Just a really impressive kid.
Yeah, I got one right. See, every year I get one.
I think it's more than that, but let's get back to Macomb and the Leathernecks. As you said, they brought in Myers Hendrickson, who actually played there 2009 to 2011. He was a receiver. Western fans probably remember his father, Mark, who was the head coach there. So Myers has replaced Jared Elliott, who has since gone on to become a Ball State assistant.
Yeah.
He's going to coach tight ends, and he's going to be a key contributor on offense. He's got a great offensive mind. Really has been good at developing quarterbacks. But getting back to Hendrickson, they brought him in from Kansas Wesleyan, which is an NAIA school. Here's an interesting stat that I dug up. So Western, in the last 4 seasons, and this is also counting their shortened spring season during COVID, but in the last 4 seasons, they had 4 wins. In the last 3 years, Hendrickson had 4 losses at Kansas Wesleyan. So he's coming in, he was a winner. He was 30-4 in his time there. NAIA is always interesting, place to be. But he does have those ties to Macomb. He's got those roots. Brought in 17 signees.
Yeah.
And I was pretty impressed with the balance. I mean, they had 4 in the offensive line, 3 in the defensive line, 3 in the defensive backfield, 3 receivers, a couple of linebackers, a running back, and a quarterback. There was a real Midwest emphasis, which kind of makes sense given Hendrickson's roots. But interesting, they did grab 4 kids out of Georgia as well. So obviously somebody on the staff, whether it's Hendrickson or one of his assistants, has some connections there.
Well, that's what really jumped out at me, especially under the situation that the coaching staff was under. Look, if they would have went to the portal in the JUCO and filled out the entire signing class, they would have gotten a pass. Absolutely, I think would have gotten a pass and say, look, we've got to fill out a class. We just got coaches in place. The one thing I did notice with the coaching staff, though, there's a handful of guys with Illinois connections. Zach Grant, I believe, is one of them.
Yep.
Who, again, comes from that Rochester Leonard dynasty down in Central Illinois. That's a good guy to have, and I have a feeling that I know for a fact that Zach was out quite a bit, beating the bushes, certainly all across the state. And that's what, Dan, really impressed me was the fact that, hey, you mentioned the balance, and then you mentioned the mix of the high school kids. So just the fact that they were able to kind of stick to their guns there a little bit, I think bring in some good talent. I think that's impressive.
Yeah, Western, last couple of years had a phenomenal passing game, but they just could not run the ball. And their defense was actually pretty decent. The problem was by the second half, they were on the field so much, they would just get worn down. That passing offense, though, was able to come back. They had a really impressive comeback at Youngstown State, and then they shocked the heck out of Illinois State.
Yeah, they were competitive. There's no doubt. Yeah, there was no doubt they were definitely competitive. So
they got 5 kids from Illinois, as you mentioned,
yeah.
Including the offensive lineman out of.
We're gonna talk about him.
Why don't you jump in?
We're gonna talk about him a little bit. Yasser Alawadi, I've had a chance to know him since his sophomore year. 6'8", 320, and Barry, this is something no one's ever said to us. He carries it really well. Okay? I mean, he seriously looks like he could be about 270 pounds. He is a kid that is very new to football. Has only been playing, I believe, since his sophomore year at Maine East. Again, not a powerhouse in high school football. So he is truly the development kid and the kid that you're going to stash away and you're going to redshirt him for a year and let him continue to develop and learn the game. But guys, physically, if he's able to flip that switch and start picking it up, and believe me, he's mobile, he's got good strength, he moves well. So it's not like you're getting someone's cast off. You're getting a kid that I think needed a year. And again, I figured it was going to be maybe a school that would roll the dice and take a chance to develop him, which I think in a situation where Western's right now, he's a perfect guy for them. Or he go the JUCO prep school route for a year and see what happens. But I mean, hey, if you're going to roll dice on a 6'8", 320-pound lineman.
Getting back to something we've talked about a lot, during this podcast, that's also the chance these schools take is, they start to develop these kids and then they jump in the portal. Now, I'm not saying he will, but, we've certainly seen that, right?
Yep. You tune up the car, you replace everything, you get it shined up, and then someone else drives it off the lot after you get it fixed. And that's, let's face it, from the basketball side, it's been going on for a while.
Yes.
It's now football is now in this game, this evil game. If you're a mid-major or an FCS fan, it's just an evil game that big boys play. And it continues to grow. It continues to grow in basketball, and we're obviously seeing the fallout in football now.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's a good point.
But you have to have guys. You have to be willing to take that chance to develop those kids. And I think he's a prime example. Again, Mitchell, a couple of receivers, Mitchell Logan from Springfield. I had a chance to see him. Big kid, athletic kid, definitely looks the part. I think he's a nice player for them as well. And Miles Johnson's a kid out of Morris, right in my backyard, that I've known him for a bit and seen him. And again, another kid that, maybe was an FCS, maybe D2 border kid, but you know what? He's an in-state kid. He's a good athlete. He's got the attributes. I think it's a real good signing. And again, just overall, I like what they were able to do here.
Yeah, they also brought in at quarterback because, Connor Sampson's no longer there. He set many of the records at Western. So they brought in Byron Jarrett Jr. out of Des Moines. He played at Iowa Central Community College. Big kid, 6'4", 235. So, obviously they're hoping, my guess is they're hoping he's going to be the one to step in. But again, who knows once you get these quarterbacks in camp, who's going to come out. And, we still have time for these programs to add kids, all the way up to the fall camps.
And you mentioned with the portal, it's probably more likely now than it's ever been before, where you would actually shut down after this. You'd shut down for a while. You're not shutting down. I think you've got people keeping their eye on things literally every single day, and that can continue to change. God, we're already 40 minutes into this. Unbelievable. You guys talk way too much. Just overall impressions. We covered the portal. We covered everything else that's going on. Dan, just general thoughts on the teams that you've covered here, and where are we heading? Where is FCS football heading in this state? I know it's been that's $1 million question in this state. No one's got $1 million, but you've got a lot of different issues facing the teams in this state. What's the state of FCS football here, and where do you see this going?
You mentioned those Dakota schools. I mean, they have really kind of stolen the thunder in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. I think when you look at the 4 schools that Barry and I cover, 3 of the 4 have major questions at quarterback. I mean, that's my big takeaway. And the one that doesn't, SIU, has an Illinois kid, Nick Baker. I mentioned earlier that, Brock Spack tends to like those bigger quarterbacks. Nick Baker is certainly not
a bigger quarterback. No,
but he is very productive and he has been a winner. And he's got that, as Nick Hill said early on, he's got that little, whatever it is, that it factor. And I think Nick Hill saw a lot of himself in Nick Baker.
100%. He liked Nick Baker when he was a sophomore in Rochester. Just that gunslinger mentality. The kid did everything he could do to win. In size, he didn't care. And you mentioned that it factor, and Nick has that. There's no doubt about it. Got a little swagger to him. It's that maybe little chip on the shoulder. He wasn't big enough to go play in the Power 5, but yeah, it's that's an interesting. I didn't even as soon as you mentioned that, 3 schools that have to find an answer. Obviously, one of the key positions, no doubt about it. Yet for the most part, and again, obviously Western guys have had their struggles here the last couple of years, but as we mentioned, I thought they were competitive last year, so they weren't that far off. Eastern, again, I think Eastern. I would have liked to seen if Cush would have had another year or two. You guys feel that way too?
Yeah. A great guy to talk to. He was always really generous with us.
100%.
And, I think if they could have found a quarterback, I think that would have been really interesting to see what happened there because they had some players around them. I think 2 things I'm really interested in, Tim, to see in the spring and on into the fall is these 2 new staffs. Obviously, they are super energized at Eastern and Western. 2 schools that haven't won a lot, but 2 schools that, like Dan said, they offer opportunity for kids who are looking for a place to play. I'm also really interested to see how Illinois State bounces back. A 4-win season is probably not sitting very well with any folks down in Normal right now. No. So I'm really interested to see how and if this offense can bounce back, if they can put together some semblance of a passing game to help out that running attack.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, and whether it's a good thing or not a good thing, boy, if Illinois State would have hoped for that big basketball season to maybe take some of the attention away off of that football season, not happening this year, guys. Not happening. So that makes it makes the winter a little bit longer. Like it hasn't been long enough already. It's been a little bit longer. Guys, I love doing this. I enjoy it. Enjoy your insights and just glad to talk a little FCS football because, damn it, FCS football matters.
It certainly does.
We love it. It's great, by the way, in this state. It's still very, very competitive. You mentioned in the Valley side, Illinois State and Southern. And again, Western Illinois, they will continue, I think, to be competitive. There's no doubt. Might not have the bank that the schools are competing against have it. Dan, OVC, I have no idea what's going to go on in the OVC. Does anybody know?
No, and it seems like the additions they're making are basketball oriented, which makes sense. If you can get teams into that NCAA men's basketball tournament, that's big bucks, and that's traditionally been what that conference is about. But again, going back to Tom Michael, the AD at Eastern, he said, we can't just look at this from a basketball perspective, and he's a former University of Illinois basketball player.
Right. Yep.
But he said, we have to look at this also from a football perspective. And he's been on the committee the last 2 years to choose the teams that make the playoff field in FCS.
Yeah.
I think one interesting thing too, Tim, is one interesting thing the OVC has done to kind of stem the tide a little bit of these departures in football is they've come up with a scheduling alliance with the Southland Conference, which has also lost members. So that will start this fall. You'll see teams like McNeese State on Eastern's schedule. So I think that kind of buys them some time here to try and figure out something as far as the football, membership goes.
Awesome. Well, again, guys, just appreciate you taking time. A lot of fun. And again, Dan, how can people find you?
Probably the easiest thing to do is just jump on Google and, go to Prairie State Pigskin and click on the link. That's probably the easiest way.
Do you have a store where we can go buy your past editions of your books and everything? Come on, man. Come on, e-commerce. Let's go.
Well, my books are found, in all the places you would, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Heck, they're on eBay going for, just huge amounts of money right now.
Yeah, and the book, very kind of Dan to send me his SIU look at SIU history book. I still go back and read that bad boy, so that'll tell you I get a lot of use out of it, and just again everything you'd want to know, it's in that book, and again just well done and terrific stuff. And Barry, well, you always have plenty to do. Where can people find you?
Well, on Twitter, I'm at Barry on Campus, and also write the On Campus column for the Northwest Herald out of Crystal Lake.
Yep.
I've been doing that for more than 25 years, so really enjoy that, and also love being. Dan and I are graduates of Eastern Illinois, so we love FCS football, and this has been a real passion project for us.
All right, there you go. There, you guys happy? I threw it on for you. So
appreciate it.
Well, for equal opportunity, you should throw on the other two you have as well. Just, we don't want any complaints.
Perfect. They all look good.
The leatherneck one impresses me. Like, wow, you even got a Western hat. Yes, I have a Western hat. So, all right, for Dan Verdun, for Barry, we appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Go read them. And again, just thanks for.